Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I am Sergeant Yeager. I guess I should, before I get into the video, talk a little bit about myself, since this will be the first public video on the channel. So, I have an old channel that I post Dark Souls 3 stuff to. Haven't done it consistently forever, and maybe that'll change someday with Elden Ring coming out, but I kinda wanted a fresh slate to do other things, such as Genshin Impact primarily. And now on to that. I have had a bit of a midlife crisis in gaming format when it comes to my main, which I chose very early on to be Noelle. But having learned more and more about team comps and things like that, but more specifically, very high skill gap comps, right? I started to realize that not only was Noelle poor at putting out a lot of damage, she essentially has the inability to, but because she shields, heals, and auto attacks, there's not really much depth to her gameplay. Really, as far as I know, the deepest it gets is dragon striking, which is not optimal whatsoever on her. It gives her only the slightest bit of a damage increase. So I started thinking to myself, what about all these characters I love that don't work well on teams? What do I do with them? So, this is my opinion. Keep that in mind with this video. If you want to make a team centered around your favorite character that ends up not being a good character, I'm not going to judge you whatsoever. But in terms of how I enjoy the game, when I put a team together, I want it to be very cohesive and very fun to play and very difficult to master. And some of the, especially the free-to-play characters, don't lend themselves too well to that if you have the effective upgrades of those characters. There's a few exceptions, like Kaya being a really slept-on character and Zhang Ling being one of the most powerful characters in the game. But what about ones like Animo main character, Noelle, Amber, Lisa, Barbara? Those are some of the lowest ranking characters in terms of usability in the game. So, there are two things that I thought of. First one is challenging yourself by having whichever one you choose to play, and have it be the only character you're using for a given challenge, whether it be a domain or just around the world. Because when you have to make a character try to self-sustain by themselves as much as you can, it makes it much more challenging, and it instead focuses the difficulty of the game from your complexity of your team to what you're actually fighting. So, for example, my favorite character to do this with is Animo main character because there isn't a gimmick to main character. You get to do this sort of like force palm thing, you get a tornado, but you don't get healing, you don't get shields, you don't get this crazy damage multiplier. You just have a character that does not mesh well into other teams that I happen to love. And the other thing that I thought of is co-op. When you're playing in a full team of co-op, you only have one character at your disposal. And when it comes to co-op, at least how I see it, it becomes much more about the community at large, what they're playing, who they represent, and how well their character's made. So, for me, what I'm going to do with my Noelle is I'm going to turn her into a PvP character rather than trying to centralize a team around her. I'll go into it in a moment, but Noelle does not work well on teams. But in co-op, it's not as important that she's not doing like the most damage on the team, more than likely. But what's great about her in co-op is that she's a character that's already spending all her time on the field to get your effectiveness out of her. And so when she's your only character, you're able to shield, you're able to heal, and you're able to do damage. She's a lot better as an AoE damage character, but, it is what it is. The reason that I'm going to go over Noelle is because I've been playing her for multiple months now, and then when I made a Zhang Ling Tartaglia team, I started to realize that she's not good and honestly not that fun on a team. Unfortunately, this doesn't come to as any surprise to someone who has taken a deeper dive into, the Chinese meta or, team building in general, but the central issues of Noelle are plentiful. For one, she's probably the weakest healer in the game, Sure, her heals, unless very specialized into, are maybe 1,000 per hit, and this is assuming you have Constellation 1 or 2, which makes it to where it's guaranteed to heal if you have your ult and your shield up. She also has a very, very weak shield. The shield itself, when you have a bunch of defense, is pretty strong, but in terms of the viability of the shield, is what I'm referring to. It has a 24-second cooldown, and that is the worst cooldown in the game for a shield, I believe, especially considering its uptime is only half of that. And you can shorten this uptime, or you can shorten this downtime by being in and hitting consecutive auto attacks. The reason this is so bad for a team is because typically on a really well oiled team, you're like fast swapping, or you'll have like your main character that's like doing physical damage or driving an element for the team. But the issue with driving Geo is that you're not actually setting up any meaningful reaction. You're just causing crystallize. If, say, your backup, your sub DPS is official, Zhangling, whatever it may be, uh, yeah, crystallize does not do damage. So it eventually just sort of comes out to like you're just hitting with like pyro damage, you're just hitting with Xingqiu's water damage, but like I mean that's not gonna really do all that well in comparison to your competition. Those culmination of things makes her, I think, a lot more viable for co-op. You know, build her to be the really tanky support character. Yeah, I mean, her damage may not be Ganyu's or whatever, but hey, I mean, it won't be too bad, and you'll be able to keep all of your very dependable, intelligent friends alive. So yeah, that's about it. I just wanted to give some ideas on how to use lower tier characters in a more fun way, and to recap that, challenges and co-op, because I like a lot of the lower tier characters in this game, but I don't like putting them on teams because it feels like I'm slushing through bog water. But these ways make it really fun, so I hope this gave you guys some ideas. Have a nice one.